Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Srila Prabhupada ki, Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Gaur Premanande. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 7. I'll be reading the chapter summary and text 1 through 7. And text 7 has a purport, so we can chant that together after I read the first summary and the first 6 verses. Chapter 7 is entitled, The Descendants of King Mandata. In this chapter, the descendants of King Mandata are described, and in this connection, the histories of Puru Kutsa and Harish Chandra are also given. The most prominent son of Mandata was Ambarish. His son was Yovanashva, and Yovanashva's son was Harita. These 3 personalities were the best in the dynasty of Mandata. Puru Kutsa, another son of Mandata, married the sister of the snakes, Sarpagana, named Narmada. The son of Puru Kutsa was Chasadashu, whose son was Anaranya. Anaranya's son was Haryashva. Haryashva's son was Paruna. Paruna's son was Tribandana, and Tribandana's son was Satyavrata, also known as Trishanku. When Trishanku kidnapped the daughter of a Brahmana, his father cursed him for this sinful act, and Trishanku became a Chandala, worse than a Shudra. Later, by the influence of Vishvamrita, he was brought to the heavenly planets, but by the influence of the demigods, he fell back downward. He was stopped in this fall, however, by the influence of Vishvamitra. The son of Trishanku was Harishchandra. Harishchandra once performed a Rajasuya Yagya, but Vishvamrita cunningly took all of Harishchandra's possessions as a dakshina contribution and chastised Harishchandra in various ways. Because of this, a quarrel arose between Vishvamrita and Vasishta. Harishchandra had no sons, but on the advice of Narada, he worshipped Varuna, and in this way got a son named Rohit. Harishchandra promised that Rohit would be used to perform a Varuna Yagya. Varuna reminded Harishchandra repeatedly about this yagna, but the king, because of affection for his son, gave various arguments to avoid sacrificing him. Thus time passed, and gradually the son grew up. To safeguard his life, the boy then took bow and arrows in hand and went to the forest. Meanwhile, at home, Harishchandra suffered from dropsy because of an attack from Varuna. When Rohit received the news of that his father was suffering, he wanted to return to the capital. But King Indra prevented him from doing so. Following the instructions of Indra, Rohit lived in the forest for 6 years and then returned home. Rohit purchased Suna Shepa, the second son of Ajigartha, and gave him to his father, Harishchandra, as the sacrificial animal. In this way, the sacrifice was performed. Varuna and the other demigods were pacified, and Harishchandra was freed from disease. In this sacrifice, Vishwamitra was the Hota priest, Jamadagni was the Advaryu, Vashishta was the Brahma, and Ayasva was the Udgata. King Indra, being very satisfied by the sacrifice, gave Harishchandra a golden chariot, and Vishwamitra gave him transcendental knowledge. Thus Shukadeva Goswami describes how Harishchandra achieved perfection. End of the chapter summary. I forgot to chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading text 1. Shukadeva Goswami said, "The most prominent son among the sons of Mandata was he who is celebrated as Ambarish. Ambarish was accepted as son by his grandfather Yuvanashva. Ambarish's son was Yuvanashva, and Yuvanashva's son was Harita. In Mandata's dynasty, Ambarisha, Harita, and Yuvanashva were very prominent." Text 2. The serpent brothers of Narbada gave Narbada to Purukutsa, being sent by Vasuki. She took Purukutsa to the lower region of the universe. Purport. Before describing the descendants of Purukutsa, the son of Mandata, Sukadeva Goswami first describes how Purukutsa was married to Narbada, who was induced to take him to the lower region of the universe. Text 3. There in Rasatala, the lower region of the universe, Purukutsa, being empowered by Lord Vishnu, was able to kill all the Gandharvas who deserved to be killed. Purukutsa received the benediction from the serpents that anyone who remembers this history of his being brought by Narbada to the lower region of the universe will be assured of safety from the attack of snakes. Text 6, or text 5. Wait. 4. The son of Purukutsa was Chasadashu, who was the father of Anaranya. Anaranya's son was Harivasa, and the father of Puruna. Puruna was the father of Tribandana. 5 and 6. The son of Tribanda was Satyavrata, who is celebrated by the name Trishanku, because he kidnapped the daughter of a Brahmana when she was being married. His father cursed him to become a Chandala, lower than a Sudra. Thereafter, by the influence of Vishwamitra, he went to the higher planetary system, the heavenly planets, and in this material body. But because of the prowess of the demigods, he fell back downward. Nonetheless, by the power of Vishwamitra, he did not fall all the way down. Even today, he can still be seen hanging in the sky, head downward. All right, text 7, we can chant together. Traishankavo Harishchandro Vishvamitra Vashishtayo Yannimitam Abudyudham Prakshinur Bahuvarshikam Traishankavo Harishchandro Vishvamitra Vashishtayo Yannimitam Abudyudham Pakshinor Bahuvarshikam Chaishankavo Harishchandro Vishvamitra Vashishtayo Yannimitam Abudyudham Pakshinur Bahuvarshikam. Shankavo Harishchandro Vishvamitra Vishishtayo Yanimitam Abudyutam Shankavo Harishchandro Vishvamitra Vishtayo. Thank you. Yanimitam Abudyutam Bahuvarshikam Chai Shankavo Harishchandro Vishvamitra Vashishtayo Yanimitam Abudyutam Bahuvarshikam. Trishankavaha, the son of Trishanku. Harishchandraha, by the same Harishchandra. Vishvamitra Vashishtayo, between Vishvamitra and Vashishta. Yat Nimitam, because of Harishchandra. Abut, there was. Yudham, a great fight. Pakshino, both of whom had been converted into birds. Bahu Varshikam, for many years. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The son of Trishanku was Harishchandra. Because of Harishchandra, there was a quarrel between Vishvamitra and Vashishta, who for many years fought one another, having been transformed into birds. Purport. Vishvamitra and Vashishta were always inimical. Formerly, Vishvamitra was a Kshatriya, and by undergoing severe austerities, he wanted to become a Brahmana, but Vashishta would not agree to accept him. In this way, there was always disagreement between the two. Later, however, Vashishta accepted him because of Vishvamitra's quality of forgiveness. Once Harishchandra performed the yajna for which Vishvamitra was the priest. But Vishvamitra, being angry at Harishchandra, took away all his possessions, claiming them as a contribution of dakshina. Vashishta, however, did not like this, and therefore a fight arose between Vashishta and Vishvamitra. The fighting became so severe that each of them cursed the other. One of them said, "You may become a bird." The other said, "May you become a duck." Thus both of them became birds and continued fighting for many years. Because of Harishchandra, we can see that such a great mystic yogi as Sobari became a victim of sense gratification, and such great sages as Vashishta and Vishvamitra became birds. This is the material world. Abrahma bhuvana loka, punar avartino juna. Within this material world, or within this universe, however elevated one may be in material qualities, one must suffer the conditions of birth, death, old age, and disease. Janma mrityu jara vyati. Therefore, Krishna says that this material world is simply miserable. Dukhalayam ashashvatam. The Bhagavatam says, Padam padam yad vipadam. At every step there is danger. Therefore, because the Krishna consciousness movement provides the opportunity for the human being to get out of this material world, simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, this movement is the greatest benediction in human society. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Romapada Swami Niti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine Panchakalpa Trubhascha Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Alright. Thank you all for joining the morning class. Please tolerate my inability to speak so well, and pray hopefully I can say something of value. The main point that I was meditating on when reading these verses was the quarrel between Vasishtha and Vishwamrita, and what we can learn from these two great sages fighting and cursing each other, especially because it's Kali Yuga. So it's said that Kali Yuga is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. So there's a lot of quarreling. I'm sure a lot of us have experienced and will continue to experience in Kali Yuga some quarrels. So I think there's a lot we can learn to meditate on what this quarreling is, why there's quarreling. So that was kind of my meditation, and I'll try to share some things that I was thinking about in that regard. My first thought was to understand the material universe and understand the elements of the material universe, specifically the aspect of the false ego, the ahankar. I like to get a visual picture of what the false ego is as like an element. Oftentimes we see it like it's my false ego getting in the way, as if we own, the false ego. It's ours. Like it's comparing that to like saying we own all of the water in the material universe. The false ego isn't something that we own. It's actually a material element, and it's the most subtle material element. So another visual to understand this false ego element, I was meditating on this cartoon, the SpongeBob cartoon, where they're living in the ocean, right? So they're under the sea, and then it's just normal for them. They can do all their different activities, but they're actually in water, kind of like Sobari Muni, but a little different. But so they're absorbed in the water, but they can do everything normally because they're used to living in the water. Similarly, everything we can observe, we're absorbed in the material elements, and ahankar is the most subtle thing that we can't even perceive with our blunt senses so much, but it's all pervading within the universe. So that's kind of was my meditation on understanding false ego as like a all-pervading material element that is within the universe. So I was meditating also just what that means, false ego also. it's how the soul, it's the most subtle, so it's the first covering of the soul. It's what connects the soul to the material platform. And it's generally explained as like a false conception of the self as the controller or the enjoyer of matter. So this false conception of the self, this subtle material element, is all pervading, and it's the most subtle covering. So if we can understand this most subtle covering, we can have a good understanding how to get out of the whole material circumstance. And relating this to the quarreling, the reason why I brought it up in the first place is because the false ego, so each person in the material world is thinking that they're the controller and the enjoyer. So then each little individual is going around with this this bubble around them that they're the controller of everything. So in myself, I guess I can speak in first person, and I'm going around thinking that I'm the controller, and then the next person over here is going around trying to control their little portion of the material world and the circumstance. So then this subtle material element kind of rubs up against it, and that this person has his plan and the way he wants things to go, and then this person has his idea of the way he wants things to go. And when they come close, and especially if you're working together on the same thing, like such as service in the temple, and the closer you get, then the more you're rubbing up against this false ego. The false egos are rubbing up against it. So that's my meditation on how this quarreling comes about. There's a nice, I heard a nice example from Radhanath Swami. There's a video online where he's dropping stones into some water or a pond, and so on the material conception, everyone is dropping their stones in different places, and then when the stone drops in a different place, then there's ripples, and then each person's ripple runs into it, and it creates chaos in the body of water. But he explained that dropping the stone in the same place, then it creates one smooth ripple. So that dropping the stone is focusing on Krishna. When we're focusing on Krishna together, then there's, ideally, if we're all in the right state of consciousness, beyond the false ego, then there's not going to be this quarrel. And that's why Krishna consciousness is really the only way to stop this quarreling. Even like in the purport, even on the heavenly planets, and someone with so much abilities, I mean, these people have the ability to curse other people into becoming birds, and they're using it against each other and quarreling, so it's still there. So kind of moving on from just understanding this quarrel, and more in line with just practicing devotional service in general. I really like to meditate on this, the importance of us cooperating together, working together. It's because of this false ego element, it's really difficult to do anything together for long periods of time. But that's something we have to understand is necessary for us to be purified. That's why the kirtan is called Sankirtan, because when we're doing things together, we overcome this tendency to be in the center, to think of ourselves in the center, to be under the influence of false ego. When we do things with devotees, our false ego gets rubbed up and kind of like stones rubbing up against each other. So we have to really develop this understanding of the importance of working together and cooperating. If we're always thinking that just I'm going to do it alone and I'm going to get back to Godhead alone, it's really, from my understanding, it's pretty unlikely that by leaving the association of devotees and trying to just do things on your own, that you'll become purified of your anarthas and come out under the influence of false ego. We have to learn how to cooperate, because that's how it works in the spiritual world. From my understanding, limited understanding, the material world is a place of like competition, and the spiritual world is cooperation, where all the souls are working together to serve Krishna. So if we don't know how to work together with other devotees, we won't be able to enter into that spiritual world where everyone is cooperating together. And especially Vrindavan, the mood of Vrindavan is so sweet and nice and loving because everyone is cooperating together to serve Shishi Kishore Kishori, Shishi Radha Krishna. Always putting other people in front and putting Radha and Krishna in front, but putting all devotees in front, and that mood of complete selfless service. I don't have much realization, but just from that understanding, that we can practice that in the temple by cooperating with each other on different endeavors, and especially with kirtan, but just everything in general, cutting vegetables or anything. We should be, while we're doing everything, we should be thinking, how am I relating with the devotees? How are we getting along? How can I have a better relationship with this devotee? How can I either help him or connect with him more? And in this way, we can really create a really strong community of devotees, which is really necessary for each one of us to make advancement, to do it together. One other point that I was thinking about is like why we don't get along with each other. Like we have this tendency, even within the practice of devotional service, to get angry at other devotees or find fault with other devotees. And I know really it happens to me a lot, like internally. Maybe externally I seem more calm, but sometimes if you get to know me more, you can know that sometimes I get angry inside. Always it's really hard to overcome this tendency to criticize other devotees, and that's what really leads to this quarrel. And one tool I've been meditating on to overcome this criticizing other devotees is to remove the activity from the devotee. And if a devotee does something that you think is not right, I can still see and feel that I don't feel that it's right, but I can remove it from the devotee and not hold it against the devotee. And I continuously meditate on how this devotee is not a good devotee because he did this one thing, and therefore I know for sure he's not a very good devotee. No, that's not very helpful for the right attitude of developing Krishna consciousness. But a nice tool is to just say it's hard when you really feel that something was wrong to detach it from that devotee, but you can kind of switch it to just still thinking, I didn't really like what happened, but the devotee is still sincere, he's a good devotee. And anyone practicing Krishna consciousness is really special. So you should, I've been meditating on really looking past anything that I feel is wrong, even like from the perspective of the particular devotee, and still seeing them in the right context with respect. So that's one other meditation, how to overcome this quarrel. I was in a college class with His Holiness Romapad Swami, and he gave this lecture at Northwestern University. It was about narcissism, which is like a word that means like severe selfishness and like always just obsessed, almost overly obsessed with yourself. And he presented this topic to these people, mostly new people, that modern culture breeds narcissism. It's like everything is made like selling you that you can do whatever you want and you're a great person, and just think positive and you can be whatever you want. But he said that there's psychologists studying this concept, and that actually these kids are growing up thinking they can do whatever they want, and they're watching television all day, so they have no work ethic, and they actually don't know how to do anything practical because modern technology basically does everything. So we have this modern technology and culture breeds this puffed up conception of ourselves because we have so much facility to easily do anything easily with technology, but actually anything practical or really actually becoming successful in like a career takes so much more than that. And so college students are oftentimes coming out of college and going into careers, and they're becoming depressed, and they have all these mental disorders because they're thinking that they have such a high conception of themselves. And one like YouTube famous YouTube video by like a businessman Maharaj showed at the class, he showed that he said that these people are coming to these businesses, and within 6 months they're saying, I'm not satisfied, I think I'm going to look for another job. and then they'll ask him why. He said, well, I don't feel like I'm making a difference. So these students think that within 6 months they're going to be able to make a difference within this, you know, multi-million-dollar corporation. So I'm for some reason, this lecture, out of all of Maharaj's lectures, like, comes to me a lot, because I'm just thinking of serving ISKCON. You know, I come here, and then within, you know, 6 months to a year, or even 3 years, I'm thinking, I'm gonna make a difference in ISKCON. You know, I'm you know, gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I have this plan, I have that plan, I'm gonna be the best. And it doesn't happen, because, you know, I'm not there yet. I'm not ready for that responsibility, but I have this really high conception of myself, which is majorly because of the false ego element. So I was just thinking of this example, and maybe it's relatable for others too, of like thinking that we're more qualified than we actually are, and then feeling frustrated when we don't necessarily make a difference so much in our external circumstances, due to this kind of breeding of narcissism in the modern world. Yeah, I definitely feel that way a lot of times, and better than I find trying to make all these big plans, I'm starting to realize more so is just develop the principles, especially becoming more humble and not being attached to my own ideas, because when I become attached to my own ideas, then other people who get in the way of my ideas, even they're great devotees, but I see them as obstacles to my plans and how I'm going to become the best devotee. So yeah, I'm just sharing some experiences I've had of being under the influence of false ego and practicing Krishna consciousness. Yeah, that's pretty much all that I've had. If there's any more thoughts or questions, if anyone wants to add something to the topic of false ego, quarreling, and Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the class, Giridhari Prabhu. I guess I had one or two reflections and one question. The first reflection is I had a friend, one of my best friends from childhood. He said exactly, almost quote for quote, what you said, Maharaj says. So he's working for a job. He's been working there for, since he graduated, so a year or 2 years. So I think he's actually been at this current job for maybe six months. And he says, yeah, I think I'm going to change jobs. I don't think I'm making a difference. I'm not making an impact enough. And so I thought of that when you were saying that. The other reflection was, in that same show, SpongeBob, they're underwater, and then there's, you made me think of one character in the show, Sandy. She's a squirrel, and she lives underneath the water, but she has to have like an underwater suit so that she can survive in the water. So she has to make her own house underwater that's, like it's the atmosphere on land. And you were making me think of souls being in this world like completely out of their element, like a fish out of water. That we hear that example of the fish out of water. No matter how much you give the fish out of water, it's out of water, it can't be happy. So I was thinking of a soul being in here is like completely, we're spiritual beings meant for a different world, meant for like on land in the spiritual world, but we're in the material ocean of nescience, and we're swimming. So I was just making some connection. The question that I had was...
It's a nice connection.
The question I had was, so you were talking about cooperation, and oftentimes when we're trying to cooperate, we all, like for example, we're all in Krishna consciousness, so we all have the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, and as a society, we're all trying to execute and fulfill the mission of Srila Prabhupada, or fulfill the desires of Srila Prabhupada. But oftentimes we have like societal goals, and then we also have like individual goals. And so it seems like everyone may be trying to do similar things around, but yet people aren't able to cooperate and get on the same page, or everyone, you know, comes together and works on one project, whereas people try to do different projects, but everyone's trying to do the same thing. And so there's the element of cooperation is difficult to execute. So I'm wondering if you can share, how is it that we can balance individual desires, or our tendency to want to do things as individuals, in cooperation with doing things as a whole society? Because we have to balance things we want to do as a society, but then also things we want to accomplish as individuals.
That's a good question. We've talked about that quite a bit. My thought is the unity and diversity principle of just because, you know, we think differently doesn't mean we can't work together. In fact, a good team has to be all different qualities of people. If we're all the same, you know, then we'll be missing all sorts of elements. So we have to learn, even though we're different, that we need to work together. So one thing I was thinking that we have to do what we're good at. Like, we have to really pursue our nature in service, what we can add to it, but we also have to be flexible in order to work together, and like not so rigidly to our perspective or our skill. We still pursue what we can add, but we have to be able to be flexible within the team with what comes up. The dedication to a team or a project or an association of devotees, and when you're dedicated to a team of devotees, then you have to be ready to take on whatever the leader of the team, you know, just tells you what needs to be done, or maybe even the leader doesn't need to say it. You just know, like, as in the ashram or being a part of this temple, the festivals come, so you know you have to give up some things to take on the present challenge. So you have to be at least a little bit flexible and able to change according to circumstance, but still in the long term pursue what your nature, according to your nature of service. It's my understanding. It's really powerful to be a part of a team of devotees, I find, and working on a project. If you're just working on your own little project, I mean, it's okay, but it's so powerful to work as a team. It's so nice. Even though it's tough, you have to compromise some things and sacrifice, but that's really what it takes to get purified, is work with a team. If you try to do anything on your own, even if you try to do something on your own, you have to develop some sort of team, and then you're going to be the leader of the team. So if you don't know how to be a part of a team when you're not the leader, how are you going to lead a team? So yeah, I just find that really important. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for the class. I really feel thrilled by the class, because I found in it a very practical tool, not only for living here in the community of devotees, but also in living outside. Sometimes I wish I can have a sort of magical weapon to break through all the layers of false ego or ego in general, and to connect with everybody or all the people I know in a more, deepest way than the ways generally I do. And for example, to make eye contact with someone, right? At least eye contact. Not even say hi, not even say haribol, not even say, but at least recognizing that there is someone else, like a human being, a living entity in the other person, right? For example, you see a homeless and you walk and you don't see it to his eyes or her eyes. You just walk. And then, wait a minute, but there is a person there. Why am I so, in my, concerned about my own world, my own bubble, and so on? So I found in your class some hints about how I can, break through all these things. And I really appreciate that. So thank you very much, for the class. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your reflection.
Thank you, Giridhari. There was one point that was pretty fantastic that you brought of His Holiness Ramapa Swami's presentation on
Narcissism.
Narcissism.
Yeah.
And that propensity that is there to have this sort of unrealistic expectations of oneself based on a blowout conception of the self that we sort of, being exposed to or like taught by society to see oneself in certain way that you can make a difference, you can do all these things. And the fact is that we sometimes, when we hit reality, that point that that video of the people, the tendency that it hits reality to understand that actually you basically not making much of a difference from that lofty conception that you have of the self. However, the fact is that you're making a difference, but you are so confused by this false conception that you miss the difference that you're making. And that's something that also we have to meditate on. That in fact, in whatever capacity I have, I'm making a difference. And then it comes to mind the pastime of Hanuman and the spider in building the bridge for, to cross the ocean to Lanka. And how Lord Ramachandra chastised Hanuman by, disregarding the contribution that the spider was doing. So the fact is that we make a difference, but we miss it because of that false ego. So part of, connecting to the real identity of the self, then you can understand that, and appreciate the difference that everybody, brings to the table. So I was going to comment on that.
Wow. Yeah, that's an amazing point. It brought to mind, just like you have this huge conception that you're gonna, liberate the whole world or something in Krishna consciousness, and then you get frustrated that you're not doing that. But just by chanting your rounds in the temple and having a nice, simple attitude, and you know, if you can just do that, then you're making a big difference within, right? Not necessarily a big difference, but it's just nice having a simple devotee in the temple that you can get along with. That actually, it does make a big impact on people's lives if you are just a simple devotee. So, yeah, thank you for that point.
Thank you for your class, Prabhu. You seem very, very grounded in your thinking. I remember there was a song that said, making you think you're the one to do the things that have never been done, meanwhile life goes on all around you. So, and then there was this, back in the 60s, there was this commercial, it said, let Hertz put you in the driver's seat. And the car is already driving, and then this man, the guy who's renting the vehicle, is just magically put into the position of the driver's seat. So it's this kind of a perplexing thought, but they fan the commercial aspect of human nature just fans the person into thinking that they're the one. But as long as you have the money, you can do anything, you know. And Prabhupada was, he was talking about certain personalities in the material world, and he says, just see, if you have money, you can do anything. So, and people are always hankering for money so they can control others, and then they say money is the root of all evil. And then I remember Prabhupada said the perfection of management is to delegate, to delegate the service to the proper person. You know, like we had a treasurer here, and I think it was during Prabhupada's time. There was a treasurer, and the money was missing, you know. So Prabhupada took him off being a treasurer and put him in a different position, just because he could see that this isn't working out, you know. So some people can't be trusted, but they could be trusted in other positions, like, you know. But money's kind of a pivot for a lot of people. It's a volatile thing because everybody's trying to control it. But and I was just reading the summary of this chapter and all the names and the dynasties and the personalities. It's just kind of bewildering unless you know, have time to think through it, you know. But like Ambarish is the most prominent one, but you know, that's a very prominent story in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Dravasa Muni and Ambarish. But thanks for bringing these things to light. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for sharing. That's it. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol.